Welcome to today's deep dive. Um, if you have ever been part of a massive corporate software rollout, you probably already know the high-stakes environment we are entering today.
Oh, absolutely. High stakes is an understatement.
Yeah, it really is. Today we're looking at a foundational script we have, and it's aptly titled The Truth About SAP Projects.
A very fitting title, honestly.
Right, and our mission today is to essentially bypass all the standard tax jargon. We want to look at the massive financial and human capital required to overhaul a company's digital nervous system.
Which is exactly what this is, a nervous system.
Exactly. So if you are prepping to lead one of these transformations, or maybe you are simply fascinated by the hidden operational gears of the corporate world, this deep dive is absolutely for you.
It is an incredibly consequential topic. I mean, when an enterprise decides to rip out its legacy systems and implement something as vast as SAP, they are fundamentally rewriting how their business operates, literally at a molecular level.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we are talking about software that manages the absolute heavy hitters of a business.
Right.
Talking finance, logistics, human resources.
Supply chain management.
Yes, all of it. But the journey to actually get this digital infrastructure functioning is, well, it's notoriously complex.
What's fascinating here is that SAP is everywhere. It is utterly ubiquitous in the corporate world, but the actual process of getting it up and running remains a complete black box to most employees.
It really does. So let's start with the timeline, because there is this lingering assumption, mostly in executive suites, that software implementation is just, it's a matter of purchasing licenses and flipping a switch.
Yeah.
Instant gratification.
Which is a remarkably dangerous assumption. You are not just downloading an app on a smartphone here.
No, not at all.
You are looking at a timeline that stretches over months, or honestly, much more realistically, years. The sheer volume of legacy data that needs to be cleaned, mapped, and migrated just to get started, it's staggering.
And while that data is being migrated, the company still has to function.
Yes, they can't just stop.
I like to think of it kind of like trying to completely rebuild a commercial cruise ship.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, imagine you're swapping out the engine, redesigning the navigation system, replacing all the plumbing, but the ship is still actively sailing across the ocean.
With passengers on board.
Exactly. You cannot stop the finance department from running payroll. You cannot pause global logistics for 6 months. You have to execute this massive transformation while the propellers are still turning.
That is a great analogy, though I'd argue it's even more complicated than the ship analogy implies.
Oh, how so?
Because the crew on that ship, they also have to unlearn everything they know about how to operate it right while the rebuild is happening.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that sounds like a nightmare.
It can be. And navigating that immense complexity is exactly why an entire ecosystem of highly specialized consultants has to be brought in. You simply cannot execute an SAP rollout with just your internal IT team. It's impossible.
Let's break down that cast of characters, actually, because this is where the friction of these projects really comes to life in the source material.
The human element.
Yes. You basically have 3 distinct roles parachuting in to manage this process. First up, you have the functional consultants.
Right.
These are the process architects. They aren't writing code. They are sitting down with the heads of finance, or say the warehouse managers, to figure out exactly how the business actually operates day to day.
Right, and they're trying to map those highly specific, often incredibly idiosyncratic business processes into the standardized workflows that SAP provides.
Which is easier said than done.
Way easier said than done, because mapping a process and actually building the digital architecture to support it are two very different things.
Which brings us perfectly to the second group, the technical consultants.
The builders.
Exactly. If the functional consultant is the architect drawing up this beautiful, expansive glass balcony for a new building, the technical consultant is the structural engineer.
Right, the one who has to make sure it doesn't fall down.
Yes, they're the ones actually handling the system configuration and writing the custom code.
And this is exactly where the tension begins.
Oh, I bet.
Picture this. The functional consultant says, our finance team absolutely needs a 5-step custom approval workflow for every invoice because that's how we've done it for 20 years.
Classic corporate reasoning.
Right. So the technical consultant looks at the SAP architecture and replies, that looks great on paper, but standard SAP handles that in 3 steps. If I write custom code to force your 5-step process, physics won't allow it. Or rather, it's going to completely break the system the next time SAP pushes a mandatory software upgrade.
Wow. So you have these constant high-stakes negotiations
Mhm.
between the business needs and the technical reality.
Every single day.
And hovering above this daily battle is the third vital role, right? The project managers.
The unsung heroes.
Seriously. They are essentially the diplomats and the enforcers rolled into one,
They really are. They're the ones left holding the bag on the timeline and the budget.
keeping everyone on track.
Yeah. When the functional and technical consultants are locked in a 2-week debate over how an automated invoicing workflow should be structured, it is the project manager who has to step in, force a compromise, and keep the massive momentum of a multi-year project moving forward.
Because every single day of delay has a cost.
A very tangible, very painful cost.
Here's where it gets really interesting. When you look at the source and start calculating the burn rate of keeping that army of specialized functional consultants, technical developers, and project managers on the payroll for 2 or 3 years.
It adds up fast.
Fast is an understatement. The price tag scales aggressively.
Yeah.
Depending on the size of the enterprise, we're talking about millions of dollars in capital expenditure. Millions.
It is a massive financial commitment. And that raises the obvious question of why any rational board of directors would approve it.
Exactly. Why do it?
Why take on the multi-year stress, the operational disruption, and the staggering financial hit?
Well, according to the source, the ROI has to justify the chaos. The ultimate goal here is a profound leap in operational efficiency.
Right.
By unifying disparate departments, forcing HR, finance, and the global supply chain into one seamless, real-time stream of data, leadership can suddenly see the entire playing field.
They get the big picture.
Yeah, they can make faster, far more accurate strategic decisions. It's designed to save immense amounts of time and money in the long run.
But consider the fragility of that expected ROI. The gap between the theoretical efficiency of a perfectly implemented system and the messy reality of getting there, that is where most projects stumble.
The source is very clear on that.
Yes. The number one vulnerability isn't a flaw in the SAP software itself. It's the human element. Specifically, the translation of intent.
The communication breakdown.
Exactly.
If the functional consultant speaks the language of business operations and the technical consultant speaks the language of database architecture, any failure to translate perfectly between the two results in a flawed system.
Precisely. If the business requirement is misinterpreted even slightly during the coding phase, the software that gets built fundamentally fails to solve the operational problem.
It's useless.
It is. And that vulnerability feeds directly into the most critical, non-negotiable phase of the entire multi-year process.
Testing.
Testing.
We really need to emphasize the gravity of the testing phase here. The source issues a massive warning about this.
Oh, absolutely.
If a company rushes through testing because they are behind schedule and bleeding money, which happens all the time, the errors that slip through don't just cause minor UI glitches.
No, they don't.
An untested enterprise rollout can physically disrupt the entire global business.
Let's walk through what that disruption actually looks like, just to paint a picture.
Okay, let's do it.
Imagine an enterprise rolls out a new logistics and warehouse management module without rigorous end-to-end integration testing.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It is. On day one, the system fails to recognize the location data of inventory arriving at a major distribution center. Suddenly, the system cannot tell the forklift drivers where to place the pallets.
So the pallets just stack up on the loading dock.
Precisely. And because the dock is full, the incoming trucks cannot unload.
Oh, man.
They end up sitting idle in the parking lot. Within 48 hours, you have a massive supply chain bottleneck. Products aren't shipping to retail stores, revenue is instantly halted, and the physical lifeblood of the organization simply stops flowing.
Complete paralysis.
All because a specific data mapping error wasn't caught during the testing phase.
That cascade of failure is terrifying. But it highlights why user acceptance testing is so exhausting and yet so absolutely vital.
You have to do it.
You aren't just checking if the code compiles, you are testing if the business can literally survive the new software.
Well said.
But there is another trap in the text that I think is arguably more dangerous than a technical glitch. It's a massive misconception about who actually owns the software.
The IT myth?
Yes, the IT myth.
Yeah.
The pervasive corporate assumption that because an SAP rollout involves servers, cloud architecture, and code, it must solely be an IT project.
Right. The business just hands it off to IT and washes their hands of it.
Exactly. But the reality is that the IT department might provision the servers and manage the security protocols, sure.
Yeah.
But the business users, the financial controllers, the procurement officers, the HR directors, they're the ones driving the car.
They have to be.
If the business units do not take absolute ownership of designing and adopting the system, the project is dead on arrival.
I'd actually push back on the idea that they just need to take ownership. It's deeper than that.
How so?
This is an exercise in massive organizational change management. You are walking up to employees who have spent a decade developing muscle memory in an old, customized legacy system, and you are telling them their daily routine is fundamentally changing.
The psychological resistance to that must be immense.
It is. People hate change.
Have you ever been handed a brand new, highly complicated tool at work with minimal context or zero training?
Everyone has.
Right, maybe a new expense reporting dashboard?
Yeah.
You probably found it infuriating, so what did you do? You created a shadow process.
Oh, the shadow spreadsheets.
Yes. You started keeping your own private spreadsheets to track things,
Yeah.
completely bypassing the new system.
And when hundreds of employees simultaneously create shadow processes because they don't understand the new SAP environment, the multi-million-dollar system becomes a hollow shell.
The data integrity just collapses.
Completely. This is why comprehensive, continuous training is the absolute lifeline of these projects. Training cannot just be a PDF manual emailed out a week before launch.
No, the text is very clear. It has to be immersive.
Yes.
The company has to champion the cultural shift from the executive suite all the way down to the warehouse floor. They have to give people the dedicated time away from their daily tasks to actually learn the new workflows.
Which is expensive, but necessary.
Very. And frankly, leadership have to enforce adoption and forgive the initial clumsiness as productivity temporarily dips, because it will dip.
It always dips. When leadership treats the implementation strictly as a technical installation rather than a human adaptation, failure isn't just a possibility, it is guaranteed.
Guaranteed.
It requires an incredible amount of strategic foresight to manage the human and technical risks simultaneously.
Which transitions us perfectly into how these risks are actually mitigated in the real world and the technology that is changing the landscape.
The cloud.
Yes. We need to dispel the lingering myth from the source that SAP is this monolithic beast reserved exclusively for Fortune 500 giants with unlimited budgets.
That used to be the case when ERP implementations required building massive localized data centers. But the architecture has evolved significantly.
Right.
Mid-sized companies are rapidly adopting this technology now. They are just utilizing a different deployment model.
They're opting for systems like SAP S/4HANA Cloud.
Exactly.
Now, for those who aren't in the trenches of enterprise architecture every day, S/4HANA is essentially SAP's high-performance in-memory database system.
It processes massive amounts of data in real time.
And by utilizing the cloud version, mid-sized companies are fundamentally shifting how they consume that power.
They are moving from a massive capital expenditure, buying and maintaining their own physical servers, to an operational expenditure.
Right.
They are essentially renting that immense processing power and agility. But while the cloud deployment makes the infrastructure more accessible, it does not absolve a mid-sized company from the intense operational risks we've been discussing.
No, not at all. Risk mitigation is still a full-time obsession for the project management team.
They are constantly wargaming.
Yes, looking at the project roadmap and wargaming the worst-case scenarios. What happens if the legacy data from the European division doesn't format correctly?
What happens if our lead technical architect gets sick during the final testing sprint?
Exactly. And how do they survive those scenarios? Through aggressive, meticulous documentation.
It sounds incredibly dry.
It does, but documentation is the ultimate insurance policy.
It really is.
It's the leave no trace prevention strategy. Except in this case, you want the consultants to leave a massive, highly detailed trace.
Think about the bus factor.
The bus factor.
Yeah. If a technical consultant spends 8 months writing a highly complex custom integration between SAP and a third-party logistics provider,
Okay.
and then their contract ends and they leave the project, that knowledge walks out the door with them. If that custom code breaks 6 months later, the internal IT team is staring at a black box.
Unless it is obsessively documented.
Exactly.
The documentation is the map left behind so the internal team can navigate the labyrinth that was built for them.
And they are going to desperately need that map for the most counterintuitive reality of this entire process.
The go live.
Yes. We've talked about the years of planning, the millions invested, the grueling testing phases. It all leads up to the go-live date. The weekend the old systems are shut off and the new SAP environment is turned on.
There is a huge tendency to view the go live as the finish line.
Oh, absolutely.
The war room pops champagne, The executive team sends out a congratulatory email, and everyone assumes the hard work is over.
But the reality is that a successful go-live is just the starting gun for an entirely new set of challenges. Some of the most severe operational problems happen after the system goes live.
Which sounds crazy, but the source explains it perfectly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the logic is undeniable. You can test a system in a highly controlled, simulated environment for a year. You can run hundreds of automated testing scripts.
Here.
But until that system is unleashed into the wild, exposed to real employees making unpredictable, real-world human errors, you simply do not know how it will react.
The system is suddenly bombarded with edge cases.
Constantly.
A procurement officer enters a vendor contract with a highly unusual currency exchange clause that no consultant ever thought to test for.
Or a warehouse worker accidentally scans a barcode twice, confusing the automated inventory count.
The organization is incredibly vulnerable during those first few weeks.
This is what they call the hypercare phase.
Hypercare.
Yes. The system is live, but it is unstable simply because it is encountering the messy reality of human behavior for the very first time.
Which is why the consultants don't just disappear on Monday morning.
They better not.
Companies have to transition into a dedicated post-launch reality. They establish specialized support teams, often called centers of excellence.
Right.
And their sole mandate is to stabilize the system, fix the bugs that the edge cases expose, and support the overwhelmed employees.
And that support is not temporary. You are fundamentally entering into a perpetual relationship with the software.
It's a marriage.
It really is. An enterprise system is never truly finished. As the company evolves, the system must evolve. If leadership decides to acquire a smaller competitor, that new company's data has to be integrated.
Or if global tax regulations change, the financial modules have to be reconfigured.
Exactly. It is a living, breathing operational ecosystem. The continuous improvement cycle never actually stops.
So when we pull all of these threads together,
Yeah.
what is the ultimate reality we are extracting for you today?
I think it is a study in immense contrasts.
How?
Well, on one side of the ledger, enterprise SAP projects are staggering in their complexity. They are wildly expensive, they consume years of focus, and they carry a level of operational risk that can genuinely threaten a company's survival if mismanaged.
That's the scary side.
Right. But on the other side of the ledger, when the process is respected, when there is rigorous planning, brutal honesty between the technical and functional teams, and a total commitment to human change management, these implementations succeed.
And they provide a monumental competitive advantage.
Huge.
They break down departmental silos, they deliver pristine data visibility, and they build a digital foundation that can scale globally.
The overarching lesson is that technology alone solves nothing. The software is brilliant, but its success is entirely dependent on the humans designing, testing, and ultimately using it.
Absolutely. For you listening to this, internalizing these mechanics gives you a massive strategic edge.
Without a doubt.
The next time you sit in a town hall meeting and the CEO announces a major technological overhaul, you won't be blinded by the jargon.
You'll know what's coming.
You will understand the invisible wars being fought between standardization and customization. You can strategically champion the training protocols within your own department, and you will understand exactly why the project manager is begging everyone to take the user acceptance testing seriously.
It's life or death for the project.
It really is. Do not underestimate the human element of a digital transformation.
This raises an important question, though, and it's something I think is vital for our listeners to deeply consider as we wrap up.
Let's hear it.
We have just explored the years of painstaking effort required to map a company's highly unique business processes and hard code them into standard SAP workflows to achieve maximum efficiency.
A massive effort to bend the software to fit the company, or bend the company to fit the software.
Exactly, but project forward 10 or 20 years.
Okay.
If an enterprise system is meticulously enforcing the absolute most efficient way for your finance, logistics, and human resources to operate every single day,
Right.
over a long enough timeline, does the software end up shaping the company's culture, or does the company shape the software?
Oh, wow. That is a phenomenal point to ponder. Who is actually dictating the corporate identity a decade down the line, the executive board or the architecture of the database?
It's definitely something to think about.
That is absolutely something to chew on during your next strategy meeting or the next time you find yourself wrestling with a baffling new software workflow. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, protect your project managers, and we will catch you on the next one.